I have I have a couple of goals for my time here with you today. One of them is to create a sense of hope that we actually can make some changes, right? So that's number one. I just want you to feel by the end that this is not so far beyond us that you're stuck here forever. So that's number one. Number two, I want you to have a couple of ideas of what you can do, both for your teams as leaders and as teachers in your community, and for yourself. Now, word of warning, these will not be very, very specific things because I don't know what you're dealing with. And that would be doing a full consult with each of you. And I love Denver Public Health, but they did not pay me for that. So I'm going to give you the way to structure looking for the proper ideas so that you know what to look for and what components to use. How you structure that later, it's totally up to you, if that makes sense. The next thing is when we're burnt out, we lose perspective. So we start to lose our ability to sort of see the bigger picture. And there's a structural component to our brains behind that. This actually happens. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but I want to widen your perspective a little bit. I want to pull you out of your world a tiny bit for a bird's eye view so that you don't feel like you're stuck in this little burnout hole. So those are the goals. There are also rules for two reasons. One, because I like rules, and two, because psychological safety matters. The first rule is, even though we are recording, again, this does not get shared outside of this space. So everything you say and do here is honored and respected. Please feel free to show up as your whole self today in this hour, in every way, shape, or form. Okay, that's rule number one. Rule number two is I'm obsessed with the chat. So use it. I will be reading it as I go. I have a standard PowerPoint deck that I use for this presentation every time I do it. I do not care about getting through the deck as much as I care about giving you things that you need. So if I'm going through something and you're like, whoa, 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 back up. We need to talk about that thing over there. I want you to stop me in the chat and say, hey, Cait, I need you to back up to that because we can't gloss over this. This is too important for me and my team right now. I am very cool with that. Okay. So interrupt me all you want. I'm here for it. This time is yours, not mine, right? This is for you. So that's important. And last thing, I don't know how comfortable, I know everybody is more comfortable with Zoom now than ever before, but there are reaction buttons in Zoom. And I don't know if you're comfortable using them, but this says reactions at the bottom of your screen, and it gives you hearts and smiles and claps. Yes, and thumbs up and celebrations. Thank you, Bev and Destiny. And Azul, right? There's all sorts of things you can put up there. I love the reactions. So if you don't want to chat, but you're cool doing a reaction, throw that up there. Now I can see a screen of only 20 of us, so I won't see all of them, but know that every time you send one, my heart is happy. All right, is that clear? We're good? We get the rules? Good. All right, now we go over here. Okay, oh, we're gonna go through all the slides immediately. So we're just gonna fly right through it. We're gonna waste no time. Who the hell am I? First of all, I'm Cait Donovan. I'm a burnout expert through two ways. One of them is I research burnout. The other one is I experienced it severely in my own life for about 6 or 7 years before I even realized what was going on. When I experienced burnout, I was a Chinese medicine practitioner. I am an acupuncturist by master's degree, acupuncturist and herbalist, and I did that for 12 straight years. I did over 30,000 acupuncture treatments. I spent a lot of my time in health. I love working with the health focused crowd. I'm going to say some things today to you that I wouldn't say to every crowd because you have a little bit of a different understanding than the average bear. I wrote a book called The Bounce Back Ability Factor. It is about burnout in female entrepreneurs. And I have a podcast. It's called Fried, the Burnout Podcast. And this is what has been shared around the public health offices countrywide, which I found out about as an after effect, which was so fun. And Fried, as a mini celebration to myself, Fried just passed 200,000 downloads this week. So it's very exciting. Yay. Yeah, thank you for that. Enough about me. Burnout has only been recognized in the United States by the World Health Organization since 2019. Now, in Europe, I lived in Europe for 12 years. In Europe, there are many countries that will give people paid time off. They know what burnout is. It's not even a big deal. People go in, they say, I'm burnt out. Their bosses say, cool, see you in 3 months. Wouldn't it be nice? You know, like, wow. But the World Health Organization and the United States only started accepting it in 2019, just in time for a pandemic. The three components that absolutely have to exist in order for burnout to be not even diagnosed, because it's not a medical condition, it is an occupational hazard. Just gets my goat like nothing else. But physical and emotional exhaustion is the first one. When I think of physical and emotional exhaustion, I'm not thinking of I'm tired at the end of the day. I'm thinking if you're somebody who normally would say, run for 2 miles in the morning before you go to work, and that would get you some energy and that would sort of fuel you and fill you up. When you're burnt out, you run those same 2 miles and you come back and you fall flat on your face and you're like, I can't work today. I just ran 2 miles. My day is over. Right. So this is not just being tired. This is like pushing yourself to do something and then being physically unable to function. This is can't get out of bed. The emotional exhaustion I like to picture as a stick of dynamite with the fuse almost burnt all the way to the end, right? So every little thing that anybody adds to your plate, that email from like that one person who just can't seem to figure out that it's not your job to do their job. You know, that person, that email that comes in, that thing that your kid asks you for when you're like, if we don't get out the door 5 minutes ago, I'm going to kill somebody. Those moments where you cannot any longer control your emotions, you feel like that kind of all the time when you're in burnout. So you're not waiting for that last thing. You're kind of always at that emotional edge. Like you literally, nobody can add a thing to your to-do list. You can't, you just can't take any extra thing or you will lose your mind completely. Right? Everybody has had this feeling before. When you're burnt out, you have this feeling for months on end. And that's exhausting in and of itself. The second thing that has to be present for burnout is called cynicism and detachment. You feel alone. You have officially separated yourself from people, or they separated themselves from you because you're probably in a terrible mind space. So you're not pleasant to be around. So you're pulling away, people are pulling away, you're feeling alone, you're feeling detached. You don't feel a sense of community, even if you have one. And that leads to negative Nancy talk. Everything is crap. No one understands me. I'm never going to get through this. My boss is a jerk. No one helps me. I do everything for everybody. I can't get any support. And it goes on and on and on. This is more obvious if you are typically an optimistic person. Some of us are just more negative by nature, which I'm not even digging on. That's fine. But this is way more obvious when you're somebody who very often my clients will call and say, I just feel like I've always been a pretty positive person and I just can't find the joy. Like I don't have it. I can't find it. Everything is irritating, right? So this sort of idea that everything is no. The last thing that you need to see in order to say that a situation is burnout is this lack of productivity. So you can't keep up with your work. But more importantly to me, in other research, has shown that you feel that your work isn't impactful, and it doesn't matter how important your work actually is. Now, I'm in a room with people whose work is like literally the most important work that could have existed over the past couple of years. Like half of us would have died without you. Let's take a moment for that for a second. Talk about impact, right? But when you're burnt out, that makes me cry, sorry. But when you're burnt out, you don't feel it. When I was burnt out, I was working as a fertility acupuncturist. I got to the point where people were coming in and telling me like, hey, I'm finally pregnant. And I was like, oh, thank God, another person I can take off my schedule. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I just helped these people create a family. I didn't feel it at all. And it sounds terrible to say that, but I admit it on purpose because I want you to know if you're feeling like this right now, if you know mentally that your work is impactful, but it doesn't feel like anything to you, you're not alone. This is part of burnout and it can come back. I know what I do now. I know the impact of my work now. And when I get the emails, I take the time to read them and soak them up because I know how important this is. But when you're burnt out, you lose that. And I think that that's, to me, like the physical and emotional exhaustion we can handle. Like, go ahead, be negative, but not feeling your true value in this world. I think that is the biggest shame of burnout. Oh, we got some music. I didn't know we were dancing. All right. So we're going to do a little tiny bit of neuroscience, not a lot, real basics. I know that some of you studied health policy and some of you studied actual healthcare. So there's, I know that there are some differences in the room, but a couple things that happen to your brain during burnout. And this information, if you are feeling burnt out, this information is designed to allow you to drop the judgment, the blame, the shame, and the guilt around burnout, because you are officially about to find out that there's actually stuff going on that is beyond you, is not your fault, and you can't just motivate your way through it. This is not a mindset issue, okay? Right behind your forehead, there is a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortices. Yes? Right? I love the plural of cortex. I love cortices. I think that that's such a fun word. So you have your prefrontal cortices right behind your forehead. What are they responsible for? What's the main function? Do we have anybody that knows this in the room? I'm sure we do. You can take yourself off mute and shout it. I don't even mind. Decision making is one of them. Yep. Reasoning, decision making, planning, filtering, especially emotions. That's a good one, Stuart. Right? All these things together are called your executive functioning. I refer to it as your adulting brain. So this is a part of your brain that develops the latest. Some of us not until we're 25, 26 years old. So this part of your brain, when you're burnt out, has literally lost cells. It gets thinner. Let us take a moment right now to think about the fact that your brain just reverted to teenage years because you're burnt out. This means you can't filter your emotions. This means you don't have the motivation and the willpower. This means your decision-making is not online. What? Right? And we expect ourselves to be able to think positive and push through it. Yes, Katie, yes. Right? We expect ourselves to be able to fix it by thinking about things better. That's not going to happen. In addition, everybody knows my friend Amy G. Dalla. Amy G. Dalla, the amygdala. I call her Amy G. Amy G gains weight during burnout. So while the front part of your brain is losing cells and getting thinner, Amy G is back there eating donuts. She's gaining weight. She's getting bigger. She's getting more hypersensitive to her environment. And she's putting us on constant edge. And she's telling us that everything is a threat. Everywhere we look, everywhere we go, everything is a threat. And we have no ability to filter her information because this part of our brain is thinner. So I'm going to give you this combo of things and ask you how the heck you are supposed to feel all day, every day. Right? There's more that happens in the brain, but I'm going to leave it at that because that's enough information, I think, for you to be like, oh, there's actually something going on. I can't just push through this. This is not about mental toughness. I can look in the mirror and say, you're beautiful, I love you all day, every day. But my brain needs to be adjusted, right? Number one trick, this is something that I'll talk about a little more later, but I know that people always want to know this information right now. So I'm going to give it to you. If you do yoga nidra, also known as body scan meditations, if you want to, cultural appropriation and all of that, but it's yoga nidra. Yoga nidra is a basic meditation that's guided that tells you, at the end of yoga, when you lay down in Shavasana and they say, relax your scalp, relax your forehead, relax your jaw. And you're in like 3 seconds, you're like, oh, I'm butter. That 11 minutes a day for 30 days helps to regrow your prefrontal cortex and help Amy Jidala lose some weight, right? Simple enough to do. You don't have to really try. You have to lay down with headphones in. I don't even care if you fall asleep, and get a free yoga nidra meditation from YouTube or Insight Timer or wherever the heck you get it. And it will help your brain go back to where it used to be. That's wild, right? Like, this should be very exciting to everybody. I don't know where the cheers are. Oh, I got a heart. Thank you. I don't know where the cheers are, but they should be happening right now. All right. I'm not, that's too much. Whoa, go backwards, I said. Starting today. Yeah, absolutely start today. I'm here for it. This is your body on stress. This was a study that I did with over 300 people who self-proclaim burnout. So let's just notice that in the beginning. These are people that themselves said that they're burnt out. And these were their top 11 symptoms. I sometimes, even though I like rules, I like to break them a little bit. I stopped at 10 and then I was like, I can't do it. I need to put 11 in there just to be a little different. The first 3 symptoms are headaches, neck tension, and muscle tightness overall. So the first thing we're talking about is like, ugh, no wonder your body is tired. Who can hold all that much tension all the time without being exhausted? That's like, hi, we're going to do all of our work from now on in plank position. Ready, go. And then you're supposed to just live like that. Like, that's awful. Then we go through anxiety, digestive upset, which in Chinese medicine, these 2 symptoms go together. In functional medicine, they go together as well, right? What's going on in the gut will go on in the brain. So anxiety and digestive upset, sleep problems, anywhere from inability to fall asleep, restless sleep, so a lot of waking, and or this like waking early, this 3 to 4 waking hour where you can't go back to sleep after, and you're like, I'm just going to get up now because this is, and then you're at 3 p.m. and you're like, oh my God, why am I so tired? Well, because you've been up for 12 hours already, right? So sleep problems is a big one. One of the biggest red flag signs with sleep problems that I see with clients is we call tired but wired, where like you're exhausted all day and then you lay down in bed and you're like, finally I can sleep. And then your brain goes ding, 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 ding. And you can't stop. Anybody ever have that happen? I have written so many amazing chapters to books that are never getting written in my head as soon as I lay down. And then I'm like, I'll remember this. This is genius. And in the morning, I'm like, what was that line again? I was really smart last night. So then we go into feelings of disconnect, low to no libido. Of course, these things go together. If you're not feeling connected to people, like, come on, Quatisha. Yeah, exactly. Anger and irritation, issues with breathing. So this was a combination of symptoms. It was either shortness of breath or chest tightness. So just like a sensation, like you can't get enough in here, right? And the last one, I included this one as the 11th because this is such a common complaint that I hear, like kind of colloquially in the burnout world, is foggy headedness, right? Which most often is related to dehydration. And you can't drink enough water because you can't be bothered to motivate because your brain is offline, right? Are we depressed or are we okay? I try to do this and have some fun. We're okay. All right, good. I saw faces dropping for a second. I was like, oh no, I got to make sure they're with me. Now we go from the top down approach. If you are a team leader, this is really, really important, what we're about to go over. These are the reasons your people burn out. Okay. This is in all the research. It's repeated a million times. The first one is workload. If there's too much work and too little hours and too few people, that's pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, we don't need to go into that too deeply, right? The next is lack of community. So this is one of those things in burnout. There's a lot of symptoms that you're not sure, like they're kind of like chicken or egg, because feeling detached is a symptom of burnout and not having connection is a cause of burnout. So we end up on both sides of this cycle. Like, we need people more than we use each other in a good way, use each other. We need each other so much more and so much more deeply than we admit most of the time. And so having a lack of community in your workplace will lead to feelings of detachment, which will bring you down a burnout hole. Right. So this is if your teams are not melding, like if there's one bad apple, the bad apple needs to go. You ever see, when you buy a package of strawberries and you open it as soon as you get home and there's like that one moldy one on the bottom and you're like, oh, and if you don't take that one moldy one out of the bottom immediately when you get home, what happens to all your strawberries within like a day and a half? Right? They're all moldy. You have to toss out the whole thing. That bad apple does that on your teams. It spreads, and it spreads quicker than you think. We should not be asking people to be resilient against the bad apples. The next is lack of control. Control, the other word that they use here in the research is autonomy. So if you have a high workload, but you're not allowed to decide if you're going to work from home or not, when that's possible, right? Or if you're going to take a break because you have to go to the dentist because COVID happened, you didn't go for 2 years, and now the only appointment time is 10:45 on a Tuesday morning, right? Like, if you have no control over how you work, that will lead to burnout. So having low control is an issue. And high workload and low control is known in the research as job strain. The next is lack of fairness. Now, lack of fairness sits behind a lot of burnout. And this is a problematic one because everybody perceives fairness differently. So this one's really, really tricky. But if you are a team leader, what you're looking for is equal pay, equal assignments. If you have that one person on your team who always gets things done so that you're giving them more because they'll get it finished, so then now they're having a higher workload than everybody else because they're a better employee, you really have to be careful of things like that, right? The other side of fairness we talk about on the internal section, because how you perceive the world around you and how the world has taught you to perceive it over time will also influence your tendency to burn out. So if you have to deal with any of the isms or a combination of the isms, you will be more prone to burnout and more prone to inflammation and more prone to illness because of the shit that you have to deal with every day. Right? Can I say shit here? Okay. Lack of recognition. When I say recognition, I do not mean atta girl, Sally. When I say recognition, I mean, who was it that made me laugh before? Quenisha, right? Yes. Quatisha Bailey. Yes. Quatisha, you made me laugh before. And giving specific feedback is saying, Quatisha, that was funny. You made me laugh and you made me notice you good work. It's specific. It tells you exactly why it was important. And if your teams are not sharing this information with each other, they're failing. This should be happening peer to peer, peer to leader, right? And leader to team in every section. When you give other people concrete praise that really matters to you, when you shine a light on people, something happens in the brain that makes people more resilient. Literally, there's a protective thing that happens in the brain that makes people more resilient. So if you are not loving on your people, you are doing each other a disservice. I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute. Be specific. Listen, we had this client. What a nightmare. You sent out an email. It totally smoothed it over. I'm so grateful for you for doing that. You did a great job. One email can get the praise. It's not about at the end of the week, hey, nice work. No, more than that. Okay. The last thing in the workplace is a values mismatch. So the values mismatch can happen on two levels. The first level is the company or organization's spoken values do not meet the company or organization's values in action. So if Denver Public Health is saying, we care about you, we care about your mental health, we care about all these things, and then they're not doing anything about it, that's going to be problematic for you as far as burnout is concerned. The other values mismatch will be that your own personal values don't match the values of the company or organization. Sometimes this is referred to as moral injury. So you're asked to do things that go beyond your morals, that go beyond your values. Now, there is no fix for this besides leave. If there is a values mismatch between you and the company you work for, unless your whole entire plan is to change their values, and that's your job, you've got to go, because you are not doing yourselves any favor by staying in a place that causes you moral injury. Like, I would never be able to work for a cigarette company. I just would not be able to do it. Between the exploitation of the workers, of tobacco workers, and the death that tobacco, like, I couldn't do it. I know that about myself. Sometimes you don't know what the company or organization values are before you get there. Sometimes you find out too late. But if that's what you see, an adjustment needs to be made. So to deal with these burnout workplace factors, risk factors, I'm going to pull up a slide, and this is where I'm going to tell you again, remind you that unfortunately, I cannot give you specific advice for exactly what's going on in your teams, because I don't know exactly what's going on in your teams. But this is a structure that you can use to put some things into place. Do not try to attack all 6 of these risk factors at once. This is a burnout conversation after all. So just one at a time. If you are the leadership and you choose one, you need to tell at least 2 other people and get them to a point where there is buy-in. It doesn't have to be leadership. It can be team members. It can be peers. It can be HR. It can be, there's a million options for this, but you need 2 people to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And they both have to be interested in what's going on, right? Because this breeds accountability and it breeds a space for recognition. So if you say, I'm going to do this thing, and then you accomplish that thing, you create space where you can be recognized for your work. Very often, especially for the women in the room, we like to do all these extra favors for everybody and wait for the pat on the back that comes after doing the thing that no one asked us to do. And then the pat on the back never comes, and then we get real frustrated. Don't do that here. If there's something you want to work on, talk about it. Say it out loud. Make it a plan. Be intentional. Okay? Fair? And then I only say practice 3 here because 1, 2, 3 is an easy thing to remember. Not because it matters if you do the thing exactly 3 times every week, but I want you to at least try to notice that the thing you're trying to shift is either shifting, or you made an effort toward it, or something happened on a fairly regular basis. So if at the end of the week, you can take note of 3 times that you were able to implement something, then you're on track, right? This is, again, this is a space for accountability. So if you wanted to work on recognition and you say, you tell your HR and you tell your team leader, hey, listen, everybody, I really want to increase the amount of recognition that we're giving each other on our team because we're all doing a killer job and it's been a hard time. So I would like to try that. Can you guys get on board with that? This is what we need to do in order to be on board. And then by the end of the week, you should have shared praise with 2 or 3 people that you can remember and write down. And hopefully once that starts, somebody else starts doing it and somebody else starts doing it and somebody else starts doing it. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. I see heads shaking. Oh, you can join late, Julia. We're just glad you're here. Now we go to the personal side. What can you do on your own? Burnout is always a combination of internal and external factors. In the research, it says that the external factors are 80% to the internal 20%. in the scientific research. In my experience over the past 5 years, I've seen it be closer to 50-50. I have not seen it be more than 50% on the personal side at all, ever. So we're saying there's at least 50% on the organizational side, at least, at a minimum. That means still that you can do some things that can influence your well-being. It doesn't mean the whole thing is your responsibility. Burnout is not 100% your responsibility. There are organizational factors at play that matter. Okay? So this is not a fault thing. This is here's some bonus things you can do to help yourself. I'm going to go into the bottom left first here because that says past trauma. And does everybody knows what ACE scores are? This is something that a lot of you will be very familiar with, I'm assuming, right? Adverse childhood experiences. When I found out mine was as high as it was, I was shocked. I was like, me, but I have this beautiful, lovely family. And my sister was like, Katie, our father was a drug addict and an alcoholic until you were 6. And I was like, oh yeah, forgot about that part. He's sober now. Everything's fine. Let's skate over that part, right? So high ACE scores, high ACE scores will lead to a lot of coping mechanisms that are very successful during childhood and adolescence that as an adult start to wear out their welcome, take too much energy, and lead to burnout. We do not ever demonize any of these coping mechanisms because you created them most typically for a good reason. And they were successful. Great. But you are not 7 anymore. You are not in that situation. And we need to shift things into a healthier way for you to be today. So for me, the personal burnout risk factors all start with that past trauma, those high ACE scores. Almost everyone that I have spoken to over the years starts there. So one of the first things that happens is lack of boundaries. A lot of codependency, for instance, when it comes to alcohol use in the family. Adults, children of alcoholics have a lot of codependency issues. Why do we do that? Because we think that we can, if we can manage their emotions and if we can fix all of the things in their world so that they don't get upset, we can keep them sober, we can keep them happy, we can avoid their anger, we can, right? So we create these senses of codependency where we are hyper vigilant to other people's states of being. And then in the world of acupuncturists and healers, we call this being an empath. And I say, probably you're just traumatized. Probably you're just hypervigilant. Probably Amy G. Dalla has been on high alert your whole life. And so, yeah, you might feel what other people is feeling, but you do it from a place of threat, not from a place of helping. And that's important to understand, right? So this lack of boundaries typically comes through people pleasing. So those things are also connected, right? I don't exist. I can erase myself as long as I can be sure that everyone around me is emotionally sound. I would be the person who would be at a party at someone else's house and be like, oh, you don't have a drink. Can I get you a drink? It's not even my house. I'm not the hostess. Oh, so-and-so doesn't have water. Do you need to, can you, waitress, we set this table for 8, but there's extra people. So can everyone slide so that we can fit this chair? I'm always the person doing all the adjusting for everybody all the time because of a lack of boundaries and because of a need to people please. Because for the majority of my life, I truly believed that my only value came from being useful to people. 2s on the Enneagram are like that, and I'm like a 7, I think. But, you know, I love personality tests. So people pleasing is another big one. It will lead you to burnout because it leads you to resentment, and resentment eats you up inside. So if you are a people pleaser, the one thing you're doing is giving everything to everyone and half the things they don't even want. So they're not grateful and then they don't share their gratitude because they didn't want the things that you're giving them anyway. So that's not helpful. And the other thing that you're unable to do then is give yourself what you want, need, desire, prefer, because you're not in your own skin enough to even know what those things are. Like if you are the person who every time people are like, "Oh, I'd like to go out to dinner. Where would you like to go?" "Oh, I'll find something wherever we go." Because you want to be easy. It's not easy. It doesn't help, and you're never going to get what you want. And then your husband's like, "Oh, Italian." And you're like, okay. And in your mind, you're like, "I was really killing for Mexican today. I could really go for a taco. I guess I'll have pasta. Maybe they have gnocchi, I guess." Right? So you can't get what you want, and you don't learn to ask for help because you don't know when you need it and you don't know what you want. People pleasing to me is the same thing as self neglect. And I say that with full responsibility of the weight those words hold. People pleasing is self neglect. And I am cool with wanting people to be happy around you. I want you all to be happy by the time I'm done here. There will be at least 10% of you that think I'm wild. That's fine. Right. But I want you to be happy that I'm here. However, I will no longer abandon myself for you. I will be in this body, in this space with myself first. Right. Negative mindset, we've talked about that a few times. That's another thing that on this burnout cycle, burnout causes a negative mindset and also can be preempted by a negative mindset. So you're stuck on this hamster wheel of negative Nancy dumb, right? Perfectionism, another trauma response most commonly, right? If I can do everything right, I decided when I was 7 and my dad came back from rehab, he's been sober ever since. I decided that he had used I'm a 7-year-old, so mind's the logic, please. He had used all of the mistakes that God allotted my family. So I couldn't make any because they were gone. All the mistakes were used. This is the kind of stuff that gets you to a place where you get straight A's, you get a full ride to college, I built a very successful business in a foreign country in a foreign language. No wonder I burnt out. No wonder. Right? But I spent so much time in this space that if I just do everything right, then I'll be safe. I won't get sick. No one else will get sick. I can control things if I control things. Right? That's not true. But how many people have ever felt like if they control things, they can control things? I know I'm not alone. I see Lisa giving me the head nod over there, right? So perfectionism just doesn't give you any breaks. I'm cool with you being perfectionist in a few key areas of your life, right? If you're my neurosurgeon, please show up that day as a perfectionist. I do not need you to be cutting yourself any slack when I'm on your operating table. But when you go home, I don't care if you chop broccoli and the heads go on the floor. I don't care. Doesn't matter. So when I work with clients, I ask them to use their perfectionism when it suits them best, when it really helps, when it's really useful, and then practice letting it go in the places it doesn't actually really matter that much. Like if you have on a decent shirt today because you're like, oh, we have to be on this Zoom and we have to be alive, and you put on nice pants too, like you don't have to put nice pants on. We can't see you. Wear your sweatpants. It's fine. I don't have nice pants on either, and I'm getting paid to be here. Right? We don't need the nice pants. The last thing on the personal burnout risk factors is low self-worth. There's not really much more to say about that. We have the trauma, we have the negative mindset, we have the low self-worth. We have this low self-worth often comes with a desire to prove yourself. So you overwork and overgive and overdo to prove it. My personal belief is that we build self-worth by starting by, and this doesn't sound like it's going to be impactful enough, but I promise you It's helpful. Starting with meeting your own foundational needs, which means pee when you need to pee, drink when you need to drink, eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired. Start there. What I've found over the years is the more we are able to admit to our needs and admit to our humanity and care for those basic signals, the more we start to understand that we are worth even more than that. It is very hard to convince yourself you're worth something by stating an affirmation in a mirror if you won't go get a water during a meeting when you're thirsty. How many people have waited to go to the bathroom because I'm just going to get this one more email done before I'm just going to get this one more email done. Go pee. We say this a lot on the podcast and people always laugh. But do you know how many times people have written to me in my DMs, my private messages, in all the social media accounts and being like, oh my God, I hold my pee all the time. I'm like, I know. Stop. We learned to do that in school, right? You needed to raise your hand. You had to have a note. Had to have a pass. You're not in school anymore. Go pee. If you have to go pee right now and you don't get up out of your chair and go pee right now, I'm going to be real disappointed. Shut off your camera, go to the bathroom. I did this last week. I was talking about this last week in Arizona. I was at a conference and somebody got up and ran out of the room. And I was like, yes, go you. I'm like, yes. When we start by meeting our own very most basic primal needs, we will start to feel our worth as inherent. If I deserve to eat when I'm hungry, then maybe I deserve love too. If I deserve to drink when I'm thirsty, then maybe I deserve that recognition that came my way this week. Yeah. The methods for working on these things are the same as before. 1, 2, 3. Don't try and work through all these things at a time. And don't pick trauma as the one you're going to start with. Right? Choose one thing that you want to work on. Tell 2 people about it. They can be at work, they can be at home, they can be your friends, it can be your mom. I don't care who it is. Tell 2 people about it because you're going to need to talk about it with them. So they're going to need to know what's going on. And then practice. If you can practice 3 times during a week, if you can make note, if you're going to work on the self-worth and you can make note of 3 times during the week where you noticed that your body needed something from you and you responded, you will be so proud of yourself. It sounds simple, but I promise I will get emails from people within the next couple of weeks saying, hey, Cait, I peed today. Good job, honey. I don't need to read that right now. That's not important. I want to give you guys some time to chat. The last thing that I cover quickly at the end, I cover it at the end because I did it at the beginning. And I like to finish on the same tone. And this is one thing that's not on the workplace list that I believe is critical to creating a burnout-proof environment. And this is psychological safety. How many of us have heard of this term over the past couple of years? Yeah, I see a couple people, right? Psychological safety is this idea that you can show up as yourself, as you are, say things out loud, be wrong, and not be condemned for it. That you will not be punished for existing, for stating your mind, right? Doesn't mean you can be a jerk and get away with it. Does mean you can share your full self and not be punished for it. That's really critical. When there's a million studies that have been done that show that when people really do feel like they can show up, everybody gets more creative because you're allowed to fail. So it's okay to throw ideas out there that might not hit. Everybody can throw spaghetti at the wall. It doesn't matter who sticks, right? Like it becomes a much more free, innovative, creative, solution-oriented environment. It's a much better way to work and live. There's a couple ways that you can build it on your teams. The first one is, as anybody know the Just Like Me game? So the Just Like Me game reminds us to be connected to perfectionism is also a white supremacy cultural norm. Yes, also that. And that is a whole nother day that we could get into, right? The Just Like Me game is a reminder of our shared common humanity. So when you're getting overly frustrated with people, when people are really pushing your buttons, when you're really losing it, the Just Like Me game is that friggin' email pops up again and you see this person's name, your eyes roll, and then you stop and you say, this person wants to be loved and respected just like me. This person wants to get their job done well, just like me. This person has family and friends that love and adore them, just like me. This person hopes for peace, just like me. Whatever it is that you have, there's a list somewhere where people, that whoever thought of the Just Like Me game has standard sentences. I don't think you need to use the standard sentences. The idea is just to stop for a minute and remind ourselves that we are more alike than we are different. Right? Give us a little bit of objectivity, create a little bit of space, help us calm ourselves down so that we can provide psychological safety for other people so that we don't turn into the bullies because we're burnt out, because we are in danger of that. Psychological safety is aiming for a win-win. Everybody knows what a win-win is. Aim for a win-win. This is like the easiest, best practice. How can we make this work for both of us? Is the simplest question that can save so many moments. The next is getting curious. If you have already decided what all the answers are, you are not being psychologically safe. If you have forgotten your curiosity and you have left behind your student mind, right? In Zen Buddhism, this is called the student mind. If you have left behind your student mind, you are no longer in service of people. You are in service of your ego. Get curious. Ask questions. You might find out that somebody actually has a better way than you that you just never thought of because they have a different background and different experience and different everything. So get curious. And the last one is my favorite. Somebody shared this on LinkedIn one day and I was like, I'm stealing. Ask for failure shares. This man starts his weekly meetings with his team saying, what are you struggling this week with? And what do you know what kind of support you need, or do we need to help you figure out what kind of support you need? What did you really mess up this week? And how can we help you deal with it? Or, and if you did already deal with it, how did you deal with it so that somebody else knows how to deal with it if they get it too? Start with failures instead of let's everybody share our wins. Start with failures and say, hey, where are the cracks right now? And how can we help each other patch them? Right? Burnout proof organizations practice psychological safety as often as they can. They are aware, at least aware, of the risk factors. And when somebody comes to them and says, hey, this thing is going on, they respond. Actually, truly respond. Right? And these are the three big things. So now we have plenty of time to chat. We can take everybody off mute. You can ask anything you want. Nothing's off the table. I don't know where I got this shirt, I guess. So don't ask that because I won't be able to answer. TJ Maxx or Nordstrom Rack, somewhere cheap. Somebody going to be brave. Cait. We can't hear you, Cait.
Sorry, let me see if I can improve the volume.
It's going to be really like her microphone's like probably in the top corner. She's going to have to talk to us like this. Oh, I think we'll be able to hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I just increased my volume. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay. So I just had a question about the people pleasing. So
Yeah.
for individuals who are people pleasers and don't live in their skin enough to know what they want, where do you start in terms of living in your own skin?
Yeah. So the first thing is to start paying attention to when you are looking for a problem to solve that no one is asking you for help with, and literally physically leave the room if you can. Pull yourself out of the situation as best you can. You could do this energetically, but you might need to like actually do it. So when I was going through this process, I used to live in Prague, and I would take the tram to work every day because there's no parking in Prague. The streets are like this wide and it doesn't make sense to drive anywhere. So I would take the tram to work every day, and I would get on the tram, and within a stop or two, there would be a lady getting on the tram who's like 110, inevitably, because there's a lot of old women in Prague that ride the tram. And she'd be getting ready to get on the tram, and it's first thing in the morning. So the tram is really full. And I'm looking at the person that's sitting in the seat for the elderly, disabled, pregnant, etc., right? That has the big sign behind it that's like, this seat is not for you if you are abled. And I'm staring at that person, and they're staring at their phone. And I'm getting upset because I am the friggin' morality police, and I'm going to fix this, right? So old women gets on the tram, and I inevitably get irritated, and I'm like, dude, in check, mind you, in check. I say, dude, could you get up, please? Miss 110 years old just got on the tram. And most commonly, Miss 110 years old would say to me, oh, I'm only going one stop, right? What I was learning from that situation was I was stepping into a situation where nobody asked for my advice. So, which is rude and arrogant. Then I'm making an assumption about that person sitting in that seat. I don't know if they're differently abled because of the way they look. I was an acupuncturist. How rude of me. Like, it blows my mind that I would even think that. Right. And then I'm disempowering this woman who's probably been riding these trams by herself for like 97 years. And I'm like, oh, she must need my help. What? She has a voice. She probably knows how to use it. But I think that because I didn't use my voice, nobody else uses theirs either. So I'm going to use my voice in service of everybody else. So start paying attention to the places where you are overstepping and nobody's asking for your help. Pull yourself back. Once you're back in your own skin often enough, you will be able to start paying attention to those things. Ty, I'll get to you in a second. There was a question in the chat. Helen says, can you talk about typical burnout recovery timeframe? This is going to be disappointing. With help, with support, 12 to 18 months. Without, up to 5 years. Which is rough. Ty, what do you got for me?
So thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Going through this, I realized that a lot of us who are people of color are just burnt out because we are people of color living in this society.
Yes, amen.
So how can we be helped? What is it that we need to do? Because it's not just the pressures of work, it's just the pressures of living in this country,
yes,
in the skin that we're living in the bodies
yes,
that we're living in, the neighborhoods that we live in.
And neighborhoods, and the access to food, and the treatment by doctors, and the treatment by staff, and the unequal pay, and. This is a much bigger conversation and goes straight to DEI work. Like, as annoying as it is to say you have to keep speaking up for yourself and fighting for yourself, you have to keep speaking up for yourself and fighting for yourself. And when it comes to people pleasing, as a white woman, there is a, like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Right? Do I speak up because I see something happening wrong? Do I not? What I have learned is my closest Black friends have said to me, these are the situations I want you to speak up for me, and these are the situations I want you to sit down. So if you have allies in your workplace that you trust, tell them exactly when to fight for you. Just tell them. Because I believe it is our job to fight for you. I believe it is my job to fight for you. but I need to know what situations you feel comfortable and necessary for me to do that in, and which not, because I can't decide that for you, because that's, again, me stepping in to your space too much. That's me overstepping those boundaries and saying, well, I'm going to, come in and be white woman savior, which is not the idea. So we go back to psychological safety. Psychological safety includes everybody. When we work on psychological safety as a company, we work on it for everyone as they are, right? This comes down to how you were going to wear your hair to work today, and if that's going to be discriminated, and all of it. That's all part of psychological safety. So maybe that's the thing you bring back to your team and say, I want to work on this first. Because if you can't show up where you're at right now, if you can't show up 100%, that's the thing that needs to shift first.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that up. It is such a hard conversation, and I don't have all the answers, but it needs to be discussed.
Thank you.
Ty, you just made everybody else get real quiet.
That happens all the time when I speak. I'm working on that. I am. I'm working on that.
Do we have any other questions that I can answer? Stuart said, practicing curiosity is an amazing muscle that takes ability to pause and access presence. Yeah, 100%. Right? That the ability to stop and think, maybe there's something I don't know here. Right? For a long time, I didn't want to be that curious because I was so concerned with being perfectionist that I wanted to show up like I knew everything. And I don't have all the answers. I can't have all the answers. That's not even possible. Misty says, how would you determine if you're going through burnout or if you're depressed or maybe something else? Honestly, I would go see a doctor. Right? Because a lot of the symptoms of burnout and depression overlap. I had burnout without being depressed because I've been through depression and this was not the same thing for me. But people that have a tendency to depression often have depression during burnout. So you might have both. I do commonly see people that need to be on medication for depression, and then they can start working on their burnout stuff. So, but this is a conversation that needs to be had with your GP. It is 5 o'clock on the dot. It's 7 o'clock on the dot. Where's Usher? Yeah, I went to my doctor first and had blood work. Exactly. I always recommend that people go see their GPs. I'm in my drop top, cruising the streets. This is going to be recorded, and now everyone is going to listen to me singing Usher. I'm so glad, Mariska. You're welcome.